Hear from me, ye Trojans and well-greaved Achaeans, the words of Alexander, for whose sake strife hath been set afoot. The other Trojans and all the Achaeans he biddeth to lay aside their goodly battle gear upon the bounteous earth, and himself in the midst, and Menelaus dear to Ares, to do battle for Helen and all her possessions. And whichsoever of the twain shall win, and prove him the better man, let him duly take all the wealth and the woman, and bear them to his home. For us others, let us swear friendship and oaths of faith with sacrifice. So spake he, and they all became hushed in silence, and among them spake Menelaus, good at the war cry. Hearken ye now also unto me, for upon my heart above all others hath sorrow come. My mind is that Argives and Trojans now be parted, seeing ye have suffered many woes, because of my quarrel and Alexander's beginning thereof. And for whichsoever of us twain death and fate are appointed, let him lie dead. But be ye others parted with all speed. Now, one of the things that you're going to notice in this passage, 86 to 102, is that we have a lot of repetition. Now, repetition is a feature of both the Iliad and the Odyssey, not only at the level of individual words or phrases like epithets, or the formulaic phrase like hose fato, so he spoke, but also of episodes like performing a sacrifice or putting on armour. A frequent use is to report a message that has already been delivered, often repeating the original words, perhaps with minor changes, some of them revealing. These various kinds of repetition are familiar elements in oral composition, and, as well as varying the pace, help the audience follow and feel involved in the storytelling. I would point out, though, that in the last two verses, 93 and 94, the last two verses of Paris' offer are dropped entirely, perhaps because Hector does not feel it's necessary or diplomatic to elaborate on terms of departure at this stage. The phrase "keklute meu" is interesting. It means obviously listen to me, but kluo regularly takes the genitive of the person heard and the accusative of the thing heard. So that's a bit unusual. In line 95, we have this word ake, and that's a very old noun implying lack of agitation rather than strict silence. It perhaps comes from the same root as the Homeric ega, gently. Anyway, in Homer it's used only in the accusative and adverbially. In the form we have here, akeon, apparently a verbal derivative, then also used adverbially, it certainly does imply silence. And even in akein ageneto siope, the first word probably reinforces rather than adding a new idea to siope. If we want to compare the types of reply, speech, Hector's proposal is expressed in very straightforward language, and it lacks virtually any internal punctuation. And Menelaus' reply, by contrast, is much more impassioned, as not only is its content, but also the short sentences and internal interruptions. And that goes on down to 105, which is where we're stopping today. So his reaction, which is subtly imagined by the poet, is no longer the fierce delight of 23 when he rejoiced like a lion, and for good reason. There he thought he was on the point of taking immediate revenge on his enemy. Now the outcome is hedged around with conditions, and even if Paris dies, the Achaeans will leave Troy intact. Moreover, he and Paris are being treated as equals, which is no help to Menelaus' affronted sense of time. That is why he feels not joy but grief, algos, and why he claims to be acceding to the proposal for the sake of his comrades rather than himself. By the time we get to line 98, 99, we've got this phroneo ede, and that's quite a difficult construction to determine, because either it's been translated in previous editions, things like "I think they have already been separated," or "I think they will soon be separated," but neither probably gives a satisfactory sense. Phronio could be here probably better, as meaning "my thought is," so "I intend," followed by "that they be separated now." He has made up his mind to accept the challenge and put an end to hostilities. In line 100, we get this phrase "emes eridos," my quarrel. And I think it's "my quarrel" is definitely pointing out that it's not his fault, of course, but directly involving him and not the troops on either side. So Alexander's behaviour is seen by Helen and the gods respectively to involve a kind of delusion, but in the present passage, the ancient grammarian Aristarchus argued that Menelaus would not use this term and so concede diminished responsibility to his enemy. Arches would avoid that by meaning simply that Alexander had initiated the crime and the quarrel. Such adaptations of an established phrase to special circumstances are not unknown, but other things being equal, one would expect the wording of the other passages to be maintained. So a little bit of an argument in ancient times. Is it Eridos or Ate or Arches? I don't know. This word tachista, speed, is the final thought from line 102. And Menelaus proceeds urgently, and you'll note without a connecting particle to the practical details. Okay, so let's get stuck into the text, shall we? So we've got this keklute meu troies kai u knemides achaioi. We've already talked about this kluo, taking the accusative and the genitive. So to hear something from someone. Meu would be in Attic mu, m omicron upsilon, and u knemis or knemidos is well greaved, with fine greaves. That's the part of the armour that protects the lower leg. So, if you want to have a good translation of this, you might say something like, "Listen to me, O Trojans and well-greaved Achaeans or Greeks." Okay. Line 87, we have this word eineka, past genitive because of eneka. Okay, in Attic, tu, u, of whom, and of course of whom, Paris they mean here. Nikos is the word for quarrel or a dispute, and ororen is the perfect from ornumi. Now we haven't done me verbs really, but this here is one, and it means has arisen. Has arisen. So if you want to have a quick look at the vocab there on the screen, let's have a second go at this. So the words of this refers back, doesn't it? To keklute me. So hear from me the words of Alexander, for the sake of whom this quarrel has arisen. Yeah, I think that's okay. Right, let's look at line 88, and we've got this alus men, which we've had before, and kelomai, keluo, which kelomai, keluo, where the subject is, of course, Paris. Okay, so Paris is the subject of that verb. So, have again look at the vocab, and let's see if we can come up with it. So, he bids the other Trojans and all the Achaeans to do something in line 89. So, line 89, we have this tucheia kal apothestai epichthoni polubotaire. Tucheiata is armor, yeah. This word apothestai is from apotithemai, to put aside. Chthon, is the ground. You might have heard the word chthonic in English. It's a really good word for hangman if you ever play that game. Pulu botaira, much nourishing. Okay, so let's have a go at the translation of 99. So Alexander, the sentence for all the other Trojans and all the Greeks to put aside their armour on the much nourishing ground. Line 90 doesn't have really any new words. We've already had mesos, meaning middle. So we got that. Auton, himself, kai arephilon meneleon, and beloved by Ares Menelaus, in the middle. So basically he's going to, Alexander or Paris is going to put himself in the middle along with the war-loving Menelaus, okay, until we get to line 91. Now, in line 91, we've got this word oios, oion, which means alone. And the line reads, 91, doesn't it? Oius amph elene kai kte masi pasi majestai. And again, it's not just Helen, but it's also her possessions. Okay, that's important, it seems. So to do battle for Helen and all of her possessions. And if you're wondering about this alone, that's saying that Menelaus and Paris are going to be in the middle alone, to battle for both Helen and her stuff, her suitcases. Line 94, no new words because in fact it's just a variation of line 73, but the tamontes of 73 is changed to adjussive subjunctive, tamomen, let us cut or seal, and of course the two words are metrically equivalent, however. Right, so if we want to have a go at line 94, let's just read it. Hoi da aloi philoteta kai orkia pista tamomen. So this concludes Hector's faithful reproduction, except for the last little bit of what Paris had to say. Okay, and let's translate it then, shall we? But for us others, let us swear friendship and oaths of faith with sacrifice. We had that hendiadis again, didn't we? Right, let's look at line 95, and it starts off with that that omnipresent hos ephath. Okay, so he spoke, and then hoide ara pantes akein agenonto siope. Now we know that akein, we've already talked about that earlier, means silent or hushed, and siope in silence. And we said that akein might be a little bit different from sort of no noise silence, but hushed might be a really good translation. So here we go then. So thus he spoke, and they all became hushed in silence. Okay, lovely. That's a good translation, I think. 96. Well, this mete aipe is just the same as aipe, really. Okay. Boen agathos, another of Menelaus' stock epithets, master of the war cry. Boen agathos, good shout, good at shouting, master of the war cry. So this is what in grammar you call an accusative of respect. And of course, the war cry was an important element in keeping the ranks together and motivated. But usually in the British tradition, it was sergeant majors, things like that, not senior officers. Anyway, let's have a go at 96. So, toiside kai meta aipe boen agathos Menelaos. Okay, and among them spoke Menelaus, the good at the war cry. So that's it. There we go. So we're off now to line 97, which starts with our favourite word, keklute. Okay, listen. Nun kai emaio malistergar algos hekanai. Now, kai here probably means two, and emaio comes from emu. Algos, I'm sure you know the word as pain or suffering, and it has quite a few derivatives in medical English, I think. Hikano, come or reach. And menace begins with the almost the same words as Hector does in 86. So I did say there was a lot of repetition going here, which is totally normal. Okay, so 97, let's have a go at coming up with a translation for that. So, kekluete nun kai maio malisterga algos hikaine. Listen now, you to me. Listen now, yeah, you should listen to me now. For upon my heart, yeah, well, that's probably. I'm just sneaking a little bit from the next line. That's thumon emon, just to make more sense. Okay. Above all others hath sorrow come. Above all others, okay, for has come. Yeah, pain, Melissa, exceedingly has come upon my heart. Yeah, that's it. Okay. Right, let's look at line 98. So Thumos just said was heart or mind or spirit. Phroneo, we just talked about at the beginning. I think it right or to think. Okay, and here it's been used to introduce an indirect statement with the infinitive. Then we've got this really interesting verb, diakrinthemenai, okay, which is an aorist passive infinitive of diakrino, to be separated. Now, Menelaus uses the same verb when giving his command in 102, as we're about to see. So that's worth thinking about a bit more carefully. So we knew that thumon emon, my heart, phroneo de diakrinthemenai ede. Okay, and if we just carry on a little bit into 99, the argaius kai troas epe kakapola pepaste. Lovely. Pepaste is a perfect active of pascho, suffer. Okay, so if you don't mind, I might take those two together actually. That seems quite sensible. Yeah, we'll do that. Okay, so let's try and translate it. My mind is that Argives and Trojans now be separated. Okay. Yeah. I intend to separate already the Argives and Trojans. Of course, because seeing as they have suffered many woes, since they have suffered many bad things. Yeah. Right, number 100. So aneka, we would probably say in Attic Greek, this eineka, plus genitive, because of or on account of. Eris, eridos is a quarrel, feminine, and he arche is the beginning. Menelaus, of course, is reminding you that Paris began this quarrel. Of course he did. Okay, so here we go then. So eneka emes eridos kai Alexandro enek arches. Yeah, quite tricky, isn't it? How do you go about that? So if you remember the line before, it says, "Seeing you've suffered many woes because of my quarrel," and the beginning thereof by Alexander, and the start of it by Alexander. For the sake of my quarrel, yep, and for the sake of its beginning by Alexander, yeah. Right, nearly there, line 101. We've got this word hopoteros, hopoteron, which means whichever one. Hemeon, emon, which means, that's the Attic, isn't it? Hemon. I mean, it's just got an extra epsilon in the Homeric. Moira, Moira is fate. Te tuktai is a perfect passive of tucho, to make ready. So here it means is prepared. Is prepared. And in fact, let's do line 102 at the same time, because we've only got the one where we don't know. Tethnae, the optative, showing a wish for the future. May he die. Tethnae. And die krinthaite, we've already had. It's an optative, but it's effectively used here as a command. Okay, so just finishing off then, these last two lines, starting from hemeon, and for whichsoever of us to death is the fate appointed, let him be dead. Let him be dead. And I've got this last bit. Let him be dead. Aloide dia crin thaite tachista. But ye others part with all speed. Okay. So, I can't think of anything better than that. So there we have it. Okay, that is up to 102, and one more session, and we are done with Homer for this GCSE.